This video is about equivalent fractions and simplifying fractions. The goal is I can identify fractions that are equivalent, and I can simplify fractions by using the greatest common factor. Let's start with the review exercises. The directions say write a fraction for each shaded figure. So for number 1, if we count the total number of equal triangles, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So our denominator is going to be 4. And then how many of them are shaded? Well, we have 2 that are shaded, so it's 2 over 4. Number 2. There are 3 equal sized triangles, so our denominator is going to be 3. And then 2 of them are shaded, so our fraction is 2 over 3. Number 3, make a sketch for each fraction. So for number 3, we have 3/4. So I'm going to draw a rectangle, and I'm going to have 4 equal-sized rectangles. So here are my 4 equal-sized rectangles, and then I'm going to shade 3 of them. 1, 2, and 3. Number 4, we have the fraction 1/3. So again, I'm going to use a rectangle, and I'm going to split it into 3 equal-sized rectangles. Next, I'm going to shade 1 out of the 3 rectangles. So here I'm shading 1 out of the 3. Let's start with how to simplify a fraction. So to simplify a fraction, you want to divide the numerator and denominator by the highest number, which will also be known as the GCF, which can divide into both numbers exactly. So I'm going to show you 2 different ways on how to do this. So the directions say write each fraction in simplest form. So the first way I'm going to show you is by writing all of the factors of the numerator and all the factors of the denominator. So for example, if we have the number 6, we have 1 and 6, and we have 2 and 3. And for the number 8, we have the factors 1 and 8 and 2 and 4. The way that we got these is 1 times 6 is 6, 2 times 3 is 6. 1 times 8 is 8, and 2 times 4 is 8. So if I looked at the factors of 6, I'm going to write them out in order from least to greatest. We have 1, 2, 3, and 6. And then if we write out our factors of 8 in order from least to greatest, we have 1, 2, 4, and 8. So if I look at these to see which factor is the largest number that both of them have in common, that would be the 2's. They both have a 2 in common. Therefore, the greatest common factor of these 2 numbers is 2. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my fraction 6/8, and I'm going to divide both the numerator and the denominator by 2. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. Now I want to show you guys something really cool about when we divide 2 divided by 2, that's really equal to 1. So really, we're just dividing by 1. So 2 over 2 is just a fancy way of writing 1, which means the value of 6/8 isn't changed when we make it simpler by making it into 3/4. Now there's a second way that we can go ahead and do this problem. So if we look at number 2, we're going to take 16 over 48. So first what I want you to do is think of the biggest number that you can think of that you could divide both 16 and 48 by. So maybe you're thinking of the number 4. So I have 16 over 48, and let's say the biggest number I can think of is 4. So I'm going to divide the top and the bottom of the fraction by 4. Well, 16 divided by 4 is 4, and 48 divided by 4 is 12. Now take a look at 4 twelfths. Is there another number that you can divide 4 and 12 by to make it even simpler? Well, let's say that you think of the number 2. Well, let's divide the top and the bottom of the fraction by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. But if I look at 2 and 6, I can keep going. I could divide the fraction by another factor, and we could divide both the top and the bottom by 2. So I'm going to divide by 2 again. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. So instead of finding the greatest common factor at the very beginning, I found factors that I knew that I could divide the top and bottom by and get whole numbers, and I kept going until the very end, until we got 1/3, where I knew that that can't simplify any further. Next, let's talk about equivalent fractions. Equivalent fractions are fractions that have the same value. But what you might see is you might see two fractions that look completely different, but when you simplify them both, they'll both simplify to be the same fraction, so therefore they're equivalent. So the directions say find the missing numerators to make equivalent fractions. So let's take a look at number 3. We have 2/3 equals blank times 15. So it looks like 2/3 is a simplified fraction, but we went from 2/3 to something over 15. So to go from 3 to 15, I multiplied by 5. So in order to get the numerator, I need to do the same thing on the top. I need to multiply the 2 times 5. So 2 times 5 is going to be equal to 10. So the missing numerator is 10. So we would have 10 over 15. Number 4, we have 2/6 equals blank over 18. So how do I go from 6 to 18? What do I multiply 6 by to get 18? Well, I multiply it by 3. So I'm going to take my numerator and also multiply it by 3. And 2 times 3 is 6. So I have 6 over 18.